Close to being ready?
Whitby doesn't like me. You can check. I can deal with my issues.
Monica, you good?
My daughter got her hands on my.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. We're up and going. All right. It is 7:01. I'll go ahead and call to order the October 4th meeting of the Weld RE5J Board of Education. If you would, please take a moment to silence your cell phones and or pagers and rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I used to not having wheels on my chair. Got to work for it this time. Yeah. Ms. Diagano, would you please call roll?
Here.
Here.
Here. We do need to approve this evening's agenda. It's such a heavy agenda this evening.
Move we approve the agenda as presented.
A motion by Vice President Sassano, a second by Director Proctor to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. Do we have any citizen comments on agenda items? That's a negative. Okay, we'll move on to staff and student celebrations and recognitions.
President Wales, I have a few that I'd like to call out tonight. There's just lots going on in the district, and so I'll start by saying we had a fantastic ribbon cutting ceremony at MES last week. Thanks to Director Proctor for her words, but I also just want to thank the community. I think it was the best showing we've had at a ribbon cutting, and I think we got the chance to show off a pretty special place. So I just want to say thank you to all involved in that. We just had a chance in the work session to hear some of the things going on. But Special Olympics had happened last week, and we had a number of students from our district participate. We also had a band competition. I think it was called the Friendship Cup up in Eden. And our flags placed first in their division, and our band placed fourth in their division. So again, those opportunities for students to showcase what they're learning, but also compete is pretty cool. And this morning, I had a chance to stop over at Roosevelt to see a prototyping showcase where the engineering students were showing their prototypes and doing a presentation of things they had created that they're going to sell to the school store, and that the school store will turn around. Each of the groups, Jessica's got a few of the prototypes here that we can showcase. Each of the student groups had a chance to talk about what they created and why, but also profit margin from retail, what profit margin out of that level, ultimately a return on investment, how much time it takes to make. So very thoughtful presentation, but also some pretty sweet things that they've created, especially when you think about only being in that space, working with in this case the laser engraver for about 5 weeks. So great event this morning, and you can see all the prototypes which we are on the hook to take back tonight. But it was a great event this morning to listen to each one of them talk about their excitement and why they made a decision. Each of the groups had some survey results that walked them through the decision-making process. So it was pretty neat to see. I think we saw 10 different groups with their initial, or in some cases, second prototype. So it's pretty neat experience there this morning. And my last one is I just want the board to know that when we look at what's happening at Milliken Middle School, and I know we've talked about it and in individual conversations, I've had even more in-depth conversations with you about some of the magic going on at MMS. But Aspen is starting to receive recognition from outside our district for the culture, the opportunities for students, but also the growth that she had this last year. So I just wanted you to know that doesn't happen very often, and it happens even more rarely at middle schools. And right now there are a lot of middle schools across this state that are struggling, and we happen to have a leadership group and a set of teachers right now that are they're knocking the cover off the ball in our middle school. It's going to be exciting to watch what's ahead of them, and I just wanted you all to hear that as we continue to look at successes ahead of it.
Recognition, but not job offers, right?
No, just recognition and celebrating that great work she's doing.
Okay.
That concludes my celebrations for tonight.
Okay, awesome. Any other celebrations we want to add? I did see that the middle school football team won league,
Oh, good.
and they are 18-0 on the season. Or well, I think I don't know. That isn't. I know they don't play 18 games, so it must be
That
their
was the game score, I believe.
their. Oh, was it?
I think that was.
Oh, was the score of the league champion?
Mhm.
Okay. At any rate, they're champs.
Yeah, and I think the Blazer Stings, the boys soccer, the Blazer Stings, is that where they did pretty well too. Benson is giving me the funniest look.
No, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'll talk louder. I think the boys soccer team, I think they took second or third to the Blazer Stings, where KQA and MMS have a joint soccer team together. They did really well. That's why I think they took second or third.
I believe also the color guard, correct? The color guard took first place
Yeah.
in their competition. So yeah, want to definitely honor them because it takes a lot of skill to twirl and march and dance and all at the same time.
All right, let's move on to board reports.
I'll start. So I wanted to call out the MES ribbon cutting again. That was it's what a huge transformation for that building.
Mhm.
To bring it up to the same level as all the rest of our buildings and provide opportunities for those students. For a long time, that building is going to be a gem of that community. So it's really happy to see that. And again, Director Proctor, well done. It's an amazing speech. So well done there. I also had the opportunity on Saturday. Have microphones? Hard to hear. On Saturday to participate in the golf tournament for the Weld RE 5J Foundation, which raised about $30,000. So I don't know.
You know, you got to turn the button on, man. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
That is better.
So the Weld RE 5J Foundation golf tournament raised about $30,000 for our students that will go towards scholarships for students and grants for teachers in their classrooms. So teachers, if you're listening, apply for those grants because they will happily give you those dollars if they have them. So, and then starting tomorrow, I will be at the CASB delegate conference representing our district and spending a lot of time reading and voting on some very mundane things that are actually pretty important for CASB. So if you don't hear from me, that's where I'll be the next couple of days. That's it.
Just as part of my report today, I just want to, we see all these great things. I'm so proud of all of our students. I also just want to recognize our CTE program. They are just leaps and bounds, forging ahead, making so many great contributions with their students. In our personal family, we're lucky enough to have one of my children participate just in the intern program and get real life experience through being able to be a part of interning through Roosevelt High School. And the amount of dedication that it takes to be able to organize these students, to organize people within the community, it's just nothing short of awe-inspiring to the people who have participated in it firsthand. So I just want to thank all the community members who have supported RHS students to intern, and for all the time and hard work and effort that staff puts into making that happen. I'm so proud as a board member and most of all as a parent to see that contribution in our community.
I feel like I'm redundant with the MES ribbon cutting, but what I really appreciated was the words that you and Earl said about it. And I appreciated that the ribbon cutting was the staff involved in it too. I think that's pretty special. Like I know, like the board does fun to be up there and it's fun for that, but I feel like it really recognized their effort that they put into it. And it was really fun, and I really liked the conversations with the crowd that came, and there's a lot of people that came, and it was a good reminder of like everybody enjoyed the project. They're also like, what's next? You know, that's exciting because we have RMS, which is still ongoing, and the next thing, but they're even looking forward to like, well, what's next? And what's the next thing going to be, and when is that going to come? And that's really exciting. The other board report I have is actually pretty mundane, but important is I had some time to just drive around the district area, which sounds silly and funny, but when you drive around and you can actually see infrastructure going in the ground for new subdivisions and new homes and see model and spec homes coming up, it is like an overwhelming, oh my goodness, like it is like we've been talking about it, and you can see it in planning committees for years coming up to the town councils, and then you see it on the town councils. But when you drive around and you can see that happening in places that's kind of hard to see, kind of off the beaten path, it is a great reminder that like there's a lot more ahead. And I hope that community members get to drive around and see that there's a lot more ahead, whether you want growth or don't want growth, it's occurring, and you've got to try to figure out how to plan for those kids that are coming. And that was it was overwhelming for a minute, just driving around. I was like, I don't even know how many homes this is. And then I went back and looked at planning commission so I could see the plats to get an idea of what it is. But it's a great reminder that we've got a lot more to go. We got two.
I think that was okay. There's gonna be a hammer time thing happening here. That's the surprise. I was hinting towards that. Well, I just add the MES ribbon cutting thing was awesome. The community turnout was what was so incredible. So many people came, and that just shows the importance of a community school. And again, Amanda, you did a fantastic job.
Thanks.
I'm gonna have to up my game on my next go around. I did, so I let you guys know a little earlier, but it is now official that Roosevelt High School will host the military academy interviews in this month, right? Yeah. So they said they're expecting what, like 350 students around that. So, and that'll be a pretty big region, northern Colorado. Essentially, the students who are seeking application into the military academies will come. It's kind of a prep session for them, but them and their families to kind of go through that process. So that's exciting, and then I think it'll showcase that school to a larger community, and we'll see where that goes. I had the opportunity, Monica, speaking of the internships last week, with the workforce development, Weld Workforce Development, I went to the workforce symposium held at Ames Community College last week. And I sat through a couple different sessions on internships. One of the things that kind of came out of this, and this goes back a couple more weeks when at the youth committee meeting, when Jennifer Borenson was giving her presentation, and we were talking about, what are things that the county could do for employers who are engaging in internships with high school students as far as being able to pay them, because a lot of the internships aren't paid. And and truthfully, a lot of those employers just don't have the budget to pay. And so at the symposium, I cornered two county commissioners and talked to them about, the idea of going back to what Bright Futures used to be. So the original intent with Bright Futures was if you would make a donation into that fund, you would get a property tax credit in the amount of the money that you donated. And so I just suggested to them, hey, look, there might be some small companies out there who could really provide a good education to our students, but aren't even thinking about that because they just don't have the budget to do it. What if we did something similar as providing some sort of property tax credit or some other credit based on the amount of money that they're paying to that student? And so they were, that got them talking. There were some folks from the Weld Trust there. They were kind of interested in, how might they be able to influence something like that. But then as I was talking with one of the guys from Workforce Development, we also talked about what can we do in our local municipalities. So is that something else that we can reach out to our city officials and say, what sort of tax benefits can we provide employers who are willing to take on a student internship, and just broaden that, because again, I think there's probably a lot of opportunity right here in our community, but those employers aren't even thinking about it because they just don't have the budget to hire a student. But if there was some way that they could get access to funding or get some sort of rebate, we might be able to grow a really dynamic program here in the district. So I was excited about that. And that's it. That's all so anything else? Well, let's move on to our report from the superintendent's office.
You need a microphone.
Yes, it is.
Thanks, President Wales. I want to start a couple things I just want to share, but the first thing I didn't call out or forgot to call out when I was doing the celebration was a program we heard about from Tucker a little earlier tonight that is alive and well both here at LL and over at MES is Watchdog Dads. And Tucker had 60 dads here. We got to see the picture with 60 dads. I think when MES is starting theirs next week, and when they kicked those off last year, they had about 100 dads. I think it's important to think about the positive energy that brings into our schools, but also the outcomes that can help as we think about influences in our schools, but also influences in our community to see what's going on in the schools right now. I did want to report just a couple things that I think are influential as we continue to move the district. One, I want to call out Tabitha Miller. As a former special education teacher, and knowing how much goes into that, then knowing how to oversee all that. But as I've gotten to know Tabitha, the things she is doing, both to provide accountability in the system for what's going on for our special ed students, but also her outreach. And I hear it from parents over and over again, how much she is connected to our community and building a rapport with families who they have high expectations for us and should. And one of those I just want to call out is she does coffee talks, which are informal opportunities to come together and talk about how things are going. And she just had one recently, but she also started a program called SEAC this year, which is a more formalized opportunity to listen to individuals and process what's happening in special ed, all in service of improving the outcomes for students. So Tabitha, I just want to say thank you for all the work, but not just inside but outside. So the other thing I want to just make sure the board is aware of is that we now, I think, are in a rhythm in terms of professional development and particularly thinking about leadership development. We have been engaged, Assistant Superintendent Kramer and I have been engaged in walkthroughs, learning walkthroughs in each of our buildings And we'll do that monthly where the two of us and in some cases, other individuals from central office will join us with a principal. But then also once a month when we're out in sites, the focus for all of our principals will be walking through and talking about what is it we're seeing. Are we seeing grade level material, as Drew Tucker talked about before? And are we seeing that for all students? And trying to get ourselves on the same page, but also helping each of us build the skills, the mental muscle to have the conversations with teachers. If in fact that's not what we're seeing, how do we step into those opportunities for learning for teachers too? So that has been fascinating to see. And out of that, we're seeing now principals who are developing their APs by doing something similar, where they're walking through. MMS right now has a daily walkthrough, 1 hour a day. The principal with the two APs, and they're then collaborating about what expectations should be, and that will pay dividends for us in spades moving forward. So those are the things I wanted to call out. I do want to update the board. I think there was a agenda or a meeting that went out for the school store at Roosevelt for later this week. We were unable to get the Well Trust to come this Friday. In addition to, I told Mr. Benson that I was available on Friday, and I'm not available on Friday. So, so he has graciously moved that next week so we can get the Well Trust, who has given us a decent chunk of money to start the school store. And that's next Thursday morning. You should see invites coming through soon to invite you to that if you're available Thursday morning. And anytime you want to go, I think it's open periodically throughout the day. We have rules we've got to follow. So Dave and his team have worked hard to try to figure out when can we have it open, when can we, what can we sell during the time to open. So it's not as easy as just put an open sign in and get it open. But the grand opening will formally be next Thursday morning, and you're going to see some of the things that we're seeing prototypes this morning. Likely will be there as early as next week, and as the year goes on, that will continue to grow. And then the last thing I would love to turn it over to Michael. I've asked him to just do a super quick update on our counts on count day, which was this past Monday. So we'll give you an idea of where we were this Monday. And as a preface to that, as Michael words on the slides, I just want to tell you, this sort of piggybacking on what Director Proctor talked about. We're a growing district. And right now, if you look at numbers in the districts around us, there's not many of us. We're growing, most of the districts around us are shrinking as we speak. So, and I look forward to that being the way it is going forward. So, Michael, I'm going to turn over to you.
Good evening, President Wales, and Board of Education. Tonight, I'd just like to give you a real quick update on where we landed so far in our October count. Just a little overview. October count day was this Monday. The numbers that we're going to report are from count day. Then we're going to enter into our verification process to ensure that the students that are in our Infinite Campus system are eligible to be counted. This involves verifying that students attended school during the count window to be eligible, and then also going through and auditing classes that our students have really in the high school, since they're really the only ones who have any kind of choice in the matter. Just to make sure that they're meeting or exceeding the minimum requirements to be counted.
I do have questions already.
So looking at the district operated K-12 schools, on count day, we are at a surplus of 73 students over the adopted budget. This number most likely will come down somewhat, as I've talked about before, as we go through that auditing process. But I mean, we definitely have a lot of wiggle room still remaining in the positive this time around this year. Moving on to the second slide, our preschool program. This hasn't changed since our last update. We're up 10 kids in our preschool program over what was budgeted for this year. Looking at Knowledge Quest Academy, they are at 407 students. I believe they gained 2 or 3 since the last time we reported. So it looks like they're going to wind up at 407 for this year. And moving on to the last slide, Civica. They, on count day in our system, they are at 155 students. They will be going down to 154. There's one student that will come out in the auditing process from them. So they'll be at 154, which is a deficit of, which will be a deficit of 56 students over their adopted budget of 210 students. So this concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions for me.
Can you go to that, the next, that slide? Okay. So one question I have, just, what do we decide on? Is this,
Slide that over.
look at that. Sure. So student attendance during the window, what does that look like? What should that look like? I mean,
So basically, there's a lot of rules around this that I'm finding out from Mrs. Rodriguez. But basically, so kind of like the top tier rule is if a child attended a school on October 2nd, on count day, they're counted for, they're counted. Kind of then where we kind of branch out into these different situations is if a student isn't, if a student wasn't attending a school on count day. So we have a couple instances, I believe there's 4 or 5 instances that Mrs. Rodriguez is gonna be tracking down here this week, where a student has come to one of our district schools this week, which is in the count window. The count window, so you have count day, then you have 5 school days before count day, then you have 5 school days after count day is the count window that we're looking at. So in an instance where a child wasn't attending any schools, like if a family was moving or in the process of moving, and then they come to, they're enrolled in one of our schools during, the count window, then we will be able to count them. That they'll be our students. So it just, then there's also other circumstances around, well, how many days have they attended? Have they been, do they have an illness that has precluded them? I mean, there's a lot of different rules around kind of the more fine-grained circumstances. But basically, the big one is if you're in a school on count day, you're counted, and then if we kind of work our way down with different situations that way.
okay. And so, and I think we brought this up at our last meeting, the question about the loss of students at Elwell. Those students actually moved into Pioneer Ridge because of the boundary change. Is that correct?
It's basically Elwell and Pioneer Ridge kind of flip-flopped with the boundary change for this year.
Okay. Any other questions?
So my question is for Roosevelt High School, is our rise indicative of a larger freshman class that has come in, or do we have more students enrolling across the boards in all classes?
So if you give me 1 second, I can actually pull
The expert is here.
Maybe perhaps Vincent has an insight into that.
Yeah, we have about 120 students that were not in our district last year that are currently in our district this year.
Across all grades.
Yeah, across all 4 grades. Our
So
freshman
the
class.
freshman class isn't bigger. The freshman class isn't bigger than.
It's about 35 students less, but the sophomore class was an unprecedentedly large class. So we've had 2 classes grow, but we have over 100 transfer students from other districts. Or kids from charters have come back, and so forth, so. Cool.
So, yeah,
Do you have our high school count numbers off the grade level?
I actually do, I was able to pull that up, so our October count last year versus our October count this year. Freshmen, declined by 4. Sophomores are up by 74. 11th grade juniors are down by 4, and seniors are up by 49.
That's a big.
Spending this money.
Have some ideas.
That's amazing, right? Like it's fantastic. It's a great thing to go into a budget amendment season into.
It is looking very positive. I'm not. I'm not willing to start spending it yet.
I can do that for you. I can do that for you.
But there's several people in the district that are more than willing to accommodate.
I'm sure, yes. All right.
I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I don't know the genesis of the growth of whether it's just an awesome high school that just came online and people are coming back to it, or if it speaks greater to like people standing back and watching, building leadership and finally being like, yeah, I could put my kid in that school because I like that leadership. Either way, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, and I do think as you talk to people, they are recognizing that there are amazing things going on in the schools in this district. People are seeing it from outside the district, and just the recognition earlier tonight that our principal at MMS is getting emails from people outside of the district talking about what's going on there, and she doesn't even have the new building yet. That will create its own energy for the district, really for all our constituents. That's a positive thing, right? That creates energy for our community. So I agree with you.
Any other questions for Superintendent Nielsen? All right. We'll move on to our consent agenda. Yeah, probably. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Most of the items listed under the consent agenda have gone through board review and recommendation. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to board reviews and advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Director Proctor, a second by Director Johnson to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Jessica, would you please pull the board?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Does anybody need to take a recess before we get into the meat of the meeting? We'll move all the way down to special business, and I will turn this over to Superintendent Nielsen.
Thanks, President Wales. We have one topic in this business tonight, and it is really going over something we went over last meeting. We learned since last meeting that to step into speech and debate, it is a CHASA sanctioned event. So we have to have board approval. So I know there was a great conversation about speech and debate last time we were together. I didn't have a chance to say how much I appreciate academic competitions. Speech and debate is a fantastic one. Tonight, we're really asking for you to approve Roosevelt High School to have a competitive speech and debate team. And if there are questions, Mr. Benson's here to answer them, but otherwise what we're asking for tonight is a vote.
So in the spirit of speech and debate, we're going to have our discussion in the Lincoln Douglas format. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
So which side do you guys wish to take?
I'm gonna be on Amanda's team.
Yeah.
For sure.
I only have a second, so it's first loser, but I'll take you. Jeremy was number
I was wondering, Principal Vincent, how many students have expressed interest in being a part of speech to debate?
So we have 15 right now who are actively involved in paying dues. We're hoping to get that to 25. Obviously, you want to start as a novice competition group with smaller groups because there are some local schools in Thompson and Fort Collins that have been doing this for decades. So we want to learn from them, but also put ourselves in a good position. So the kids are motivated, so we'll do a couple competitions this year. And go from there. So, something I wanted to do when I first got here is having more academically competitive teams. So here we are.
So 15 or 1-5. I think you're right. More academic based competition is a very good thing. I mean, Roosevelt knocks it out of the park when it comes to athletics, but the academic stuff is great. So I'm glad to hear that. One thing, just so Miss Buntinas, did I pronounce that right? Is the sponsor for this club. Are we also approving an extra duty salary for her? Okay, good. Because if we're not, we should. This is going to be a lot of work. Okay, good.
Man, I'm so excited for this. I really am. Like, you guys do a competition and host it and you need a judge, please tag me in. I would love to be a part of it. It was really enriching for my life. So I have a question because when I was in high school, speech and debate was a class, and the team, if you're in the class, you competed as well, but it was a class where you got at that, I'm old, right? So it's an English credit versus a language arts credit. Now I'm in language arts, but it was an academic class where you did research and you practiced and you spoke, kind of like their speech classes now, right? So it counted as an English class. So it counted as my senior English, but I was curious if there's a possibility or a path for speech and debate to also become a credited course for the high school, because you know, in speech and debate, depending on, well, I'll just say across the board, no matter what you compete in on speech and debate, there's a lot of research and prep and feedback loops that you need to get. And it's a lot more than just a class after school it takes. I mean, I would do the class and I would stay after school, right? So these kids are going to put a lot of effort into it in order to eventually bring home any kind of award from these competitions. So I think it'd be great if we could explore that, not this year, but in the coming years. I think that would be great to add that because it really does play into your professional role as well.
Had that class 4 years ago, maybe 3. So obviously that requires a staff member.
Yeah.
That staff member is still on staff who taught that class, and I believe it was the English either elective or English credit. So obviously Ms. Martinez is an English teacher, but I think you're right. I mean, claims, evidence, and reasoning, claims and counterclaims, those are all fantastic skills to kind of argue with the purpose, debate with the purpose.
Yeah.
And then also the oratory portion of the speech is a fantastic skill for our students. Certainly something we can look into further.
Yeah. The other thing that I actually found like later in my career, which genesis back to that class, is being able to provide constructive feedback to people. So I'm a manager now, right? And like being able to provide constructive feedback that people are willing to take is a skill set that I actually learned from that class, because we'd have to critique each other, right? And so at the beginning, you're like kind of a jerk about it, and you're delivering very harsh criticism to your peers, and then you can see how like it affects them. And so you're like, okay, I could have worded that better, and this is how I could have worded it. So I do feel like I can critique and provide that constructive feedback as manager to my staff because of that class. So it's just kind of a side professional thing. Another reason why I think it's a great for it to be a high school class versus just.
First and extracurricular. Great.
Excuse me, not to take anything away from speech and debate, but did I see that you're also rainbow or knowledgeable? Bringing that back as well? Good, that's exciting too. All right. Any other questions? So yeah, we can take action on this tonight. It does, as Vice President Sassano stated, it does include extra duty salary for the sponsors. So if that is part of your consideration process,
Well, I think we got money now.
We should at least have enough to cover this extra fee.
All right, I'm going to motion to approve the request to add the speech and debate club. I am super pumped to it.
we have a motion by Director Proctor, a second by Vice President Sassano to approve the request to add a speech and debate club at Roosevelt High School. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Diagana.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. It'd be great.
Do we have citizen comments on general topics? No. All right. Any other items deemed necessary by the board? Oh, just reading today. All right, hearing none, we will adjourn at 7:42. Thank you, guys.